In a press statement released late Sunday night, 12 of the giants of European football announced the formation of the long-rumored European Super League, a semi-closed continental competition that would guarantee the places of some of Europe's super clubs and ultimately usher in a new era for the sport that would likely see the end of the sport as we know it today. Now, since the news broke, the announcement has been met with overwhelming criticism from fans, former players, soccer media, UEFA officials, and FIFA itself. And although much of Europe is still under strict quarantine, fans still took to the streets to protest. In Chelsea in particular, the fans managed to disrupt the Chelsea versus Brighton game, eventually forcing the club to publicly withdraw from the Super League. Now, Chelsea wasn't the first domino to fall, but soon many others joined in, and utter chaos ensued in the wake. Now, there are many villains in all this, but one of the main storylines that has emerged from the heart of this discussion is the battle between the American single-entity version of sport versus the European club model, and more specifically, the American closed league revenue-sharing system versus the European promotion relegation. And it certainly doesn't help that 4 of the owners of the 12 Super League teams are American, 2 of which would have served as the vice chairman on the European Super League board. So ultimately, are Americans to blame? Is American sports to blame? Was all this just greed run amok, or was there something else involved? And that's what we'll discuss on this episode of the Yank Report. What's up? My name is Sam. Welcome to the Yank Report, the show where we usually talk about the U.S. men's national team. But today, this story is just too big and touches every aspect of football around the world. So we're going to dive straight into it, talk about this whole European Super League system, talk about pro-rel versus single entity, and just the whole landscape of global soccer and how this all is intertwined. Now, there's no doubt that European soccer clubs have more heart than American sports franchises. The history of the clubs, often founded by the town's working class, permeate throughout everything that they do. The stadiums are often in the center of the community and are not surrounded by acres and acres of parking lots like American stadiums. And unlike in the American sports landscape, there's a palpable sense of opportunity at the beginning of every season. There's that idea that with some good decisions and a little luck, even the smallest clubs in Europe can rise up to compete with the giants. However, on the flip side, there's also that unmistakable sense of doom that a few unlucky moments can see a team crash and burn out of top-flight competition. This ultimate dependence on results make the drama of European soccer unlike anything that we have in American sports. But it's this very same drama that has made the impending threats of a European Super League all the more likely as more and more money has come into the sport. Because while the romance and drama of qualification and promotion relegation make for incredible entertainment, it also makes for a risky investment opportunity. And ultimately, the key word in all of this Super League drama is investment. See, the closed system of American sports has made American sports franchises incredibly valuable and safe commodities for the world's super wealthy to invest. With the growth of global markets and ever-increasing TV contracts, the NFL, NBA, MLB franchises have all seen the value of their franchises continue to grow. Meanwhile, in MLS, the value of franchises has absolutely exploded. In the beginning, when MLS first started, getting the original owners to invest in the sport was a tough sell. American soccer leagues had folded in the past, and there was no guarantee that the MLS model would be successful. In fact, in the early days of MLS, a few franchises did fold. But fast forward 25 years, and the fee to create a franchise to join MLS has grown from a few million in the beginning to 300 million today, plus a stadium. The growth of MLS, along with salary caps and collective bargaining, has produced one of the hottest investment opportunities in all of world sports. But across the Atlantic, that growth has not been reciprocated because the influx of the new owners with big money into the sport over the last 20 years has seen new powers emerge and some traditional giants kind of regress. To compound these issues, the competition to sign the best players has pushed player salaries higher to the point where super clubs are often operating at a loss. And for some of the European super clubs with multi-billionaire owners, operating at a loss is not a big deal. But for others, this trajectory is unstable. They simply have to win in order to receive the prize money to keep from going under. And winning is getting more and more difficult. So they continue to spend money that they don't have on big players that they hope will return them to financial stability. But some major flops for some major clubs in recent years have put absolutely everything into jeopardy. Ultimately, these clubs are organisms, and organisms will do everything they can to survive, which has brought us to where we are today. For some of these giant clubs, the European Super League is, of course, a greedy money grab to make even more money. But for others, the Super League was a last-ditch effort to avoid potential financial ruin. It's no surprise that Manchester City, a club with mega money backing and also one of the best front offices in the world, was the first to pull out. Same thing for Chelsea. For them, the European Super League was just a move to stay on top. They didn't really need it. And it's no wonder that other Premier League teams were close behind. The Premier League is far and away the wealthiest league in the world. But it's also no surprise that the Spanish and Italian clubs were the most resistant, particularly the Spanish. For the Spanish and Italian clubs, while greed may have been a major motivating factor, it wasn't the only factor. This is also about survival. If you look at how the different leagues operate around the world, you'll see that in the Spanish Premier League, so many of the resources are devoted to Real Madrid and Barcelona. The idea being that if these clubs can continue to grow and be the most dominant clubs in the world, that money will trickle down in the Spanish Premier League and allow the league to thrive. While over in the EPL, they have a much more even distribution of their league's TV money, and this has allowed teams like West Ham and Leicester City to compete with some of the big boys. That investment in competition has made the Premier League one of the most interesting and the most watched leagues in the world, while the Spanish Premier League cannot command nearly the amount of TV money as the EPL. Over the years, this has forced teams like Real Madrid and Barcelona to figure out more and more ways to get more and more money in order to compete with their counterparts in other parts of the world, and this European Super League is just the latest manifestation of that. The European Super League may have been defeated in this current incarnation, but the power of single entity is not something that Europe's super clubs are likely ready to give up on. Lost within all the Super League discussion is the fact that the Champions League made some significant changes that will benefit Europe's biggest clubs this week. And although the super clubs may have lost this battle, the changes to the Champions League ensure that disparity between the haves and have-nots only continues to grow. Some of the super clubs may be in financial peril now, but they do also continue to yield a tremendous amount of power within the soccer world, and have shown that they will not go down without a fight. This is not over. The Real Madrids and Barcelonas of the world will continue to do everything that they can to continue to compete at the highest level. Whether that means changing rules or changing leagues or changing competitions, they are going to do whatever they can to stay at that level. Now, it's no surprise that in the wake of all this, we've had so much news in the wake of all this, that a club like Bayern Munich, which is one of the best clubs in the world and one of the best run clubs in the world, has come out in favor of a European salary cap. Now, you may be wondering why one of the best clubs in the world would be in favor of a salary cap, but this ordeal shows that some of the top clubs in the world are not as financially sound as we come to think that they are. As we've seen with American sports franchises, salary caps allow teams to have a better grip on their expenses versus their profits, which help them to predict a better return on investment for investors. And ultimately, this is what it's all about. If these European super clubs want to continue to compete at the highest level, they need investors at the highest level. And in order to get investors at the highest level, you have to show that those investors are going to get a return on investment. MLS is showing right now that if you invest in MLS, that your money can go up at a tremendous rate. If you were one of the early investors in MLS and now MLS clubs are going for $300 million, you have received a tremendous return on your money. In Europe, it's not quite the same right now. We're not seeing much return on investment at all. So the closer they can get to that single entity model where they have a more sustainable financial future, the better it is for these clubs. And honestly, probably the better and more secure it is for football in general. So that's it for me, guys. This has been an absolutely crazy week in the world of soccer, and I'm curious as to what you guys think about all this. As I always say, if you speak Spanish, please leave a comment in Spanish so I can practicar mi español. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you're watching at this point and you're not a subscriber, please consider hitting that subscribe button so you can see more videos like this. Hit that like button if you enjoyed this video. If it entertains you at all, it helps the channel out tremendously. My name is Sam, and this is The Anchor Report.